In this video, we're going to be making an adorable woodland strawberry sea turtle. Oh my goodness. We're going to be drawing it in Procreate. You can follow along in whatever software or pen and paper or materials, whatever is your thing, do you. My name is Evie. Let's get into it. Alright, so we're going to start with just a circle that's going to be the shell of our turtle. Just adding a kind of an oval circle here. There we go. And then I'm just going to lower the opacity of that a little bit. And I'm going to make a new layer so I can sketch on top of it. And now we're going to do the head. So the head, again, another circle. And this circle, I'm making it about maybe half of the size of the body. Maybe slightly smaller than half. Like that. And I'm going to move that just a little bit. And now I want to come into the head and I'm going to give it a bit of a chin. So to do that, I'm going to first start by doing a facial line on my head like that, just a little curve. And I want to just tidy up a little bit inside of my circle so I can see better. There we go. And now we're going to do the chin. So to do the chin, just do an outward curve like this. And then you're going to come back and align with that circle. There you have it. Now let's tidy up our head again, because I want us to be able to see all the things we're doing. And now we're going to add some eyes. So for now, I'm just going to do like some little circles. I'm doing kind of a narrow one for the left-hand side. And then we're going to do a slightly bigger one for the right-hand side, because it's closer to us. And this just creates a little bit of perspective. Don't worry if your eyes are looking a bit wonky at this stage. It doesn't matter. We're going to come back and polish it later. Right now, it's just about getting the proportions right. So I'm going to give it just a couple of dots as eyebrows as well. And then I want to give it two little curves as kind of an indent of where the nose would be. And there you go. Now we're going to zoom back out. And I'm not loving how that head is tilted, so I'm just going to grab it and rotate it a little bit. Like that. I can already tell I'm not happy with that cheek. I'm going to come back in and I'm just going to make the cheek a little bit smaller. You don't have to do that. You can, make your chin as exaggerated as you want. These eyes are definitely going to be improved on, but we're going to get the rest of our turtle mapped out first. Move it a bit further out from the shell again. Now I feel like this is getting in the way a bit, so I'm going to go down to my shell drawing. And I'm going to remove the parts that are inside of the head. There we go. And now I'm going to change the opacity of that again, back up to 100, and merge with the head. That way I can just keep drawing on one layer and it'll just be a bit easier to sketch out. So now let's plan out the rest of our turtle. I'm going to start with the back legs, or the back flippers. For that, we're going to do one circle on this side, and we're going to one circle on the other. And then of course, because sea turtles have tails, so we're going to give it a little bit of a tail. And now we're going to do the front flipper. So to do that, I like to imagine like where, if I draw the one that's closest to me first, and it kind of looks like a banana when you draw it, like a chunky banana. And then we're going to come in and try to replicate that in the same way we did the eye. So we know it needs to be a bit like squashed and a bit smaller. I think that works for now. Again, I'm going to come in and just tidy up a bit in here because I don't want to see all the pieces of my flippers that are going to be hidden in the shell anyways. I apologize if you can hear dogs in the background. It's our adjoining neighbor. Alright, so I'm going to zoom back out and get a look at my turtle from up above, and it's looking a bit weird. I think I like all of the proportions except for the shell, so I'm going to select the shell on its own. Just make that a little bit smaller. Yes, I like that. A little bit bigger. There we go. And the turtle feels a bit squashed, so I'm going to grab the head again, and I'm just going to play around with where I like seeing that head. Yeah, I think I'm going to bring it out just a little bit, play around with the rotation. There we go. I like that better. So we're going to keep that. And for now, I'm just going to join the shell up again, but we are going to make a little bit of changes to that after. So now let's just tidy up our drawing. I want to make sure that the tail is in front of this flipper, but that this flipper covers the tail. And there we go. We have the start of our turtle. Now let's lower the opacity of this layer and we're going to make a new one. I'm going to change the color of my brush so that it is not confusing, and we're going to make some iterations to this. So I feel like the shell feels a bit flat, so I am going to just make it a bit chunkier, and in the back here I want to give it a little bit of an edge. So instead of it coming out as an oval, it's going to have a slightly pointier bit. Not too pointy, not as pointy as that I would say, but just a slightly pointier bit. And then we're just going to make it a little bit chunkier in the front as well. It just feels a bit more turtle-esque. And now in this area, we want to give it a bit of a collar so that it connects to the head better. So I'm going to start here and make almost like a donut around the turtle's head, like this. I think I actually quite like the head shape itself. So I'm going to just replicate that onto our new drawing. And then I'm gonna bring these facial lines back. Go, and now I can see that the eyes that I have are definitely not in the right place. So I'm gonna try drawing them again according to my facial lines. The eyes are probably the thing that I redraw the most in my work, and very often I end up going back to the very first sketch because they look better than all the reworked ones, but we'll see how this goes. There we have it. I think that already looks so much better than what we had before. And let's emphasize those eyebrows again, and I want to bring the snout just down a little bit like that. Perfect. And for mine as well, I'm gonna just lower the opacity with my eraser of these headlines, and I'm gonna add a little bit of an open mouth, and all I'm doing with that is a shape like this, like an O, and I'm just not connecting it all the way through. So there's a little gap here, if you can see that, and that's gonna be my mouth. I still feel like this eye is a little bit big. I'm just gonna grab it and make it a tiny bit smaller, just like that. Not a massive difference. And there we go. Now, before we start with the flippers again, I want to start on the strawberry shell. So like we did with the head where we made like a proportion line, we're going to do that on the shell as well. So just draw a little curve where you feel like the top of the shell would be. And then we're going to draw a little circle. And this is where the stem of our strawberry will be popping out. So to do the stem of the strawberry, start with a curve sticking out. Just kind of do a little stem like that. Now I'm going to erase the lines inside of my stem. And then I want to do almost a flower shape around it. If you watched my capybara drawing tutorial with the tulips, this is not massively different. So what I like to do, start with a circle, and then I just draw my flowers like this, one continuous line. And obviously I'm going to correct the shaky bits, but it is just like a little doodle where you get these little curvy bits. I quite like to do that. However, you don't have to do that. You can totally just do a cleaner version. Absolutely. I just feel like that's a bit more playful. I'll keep that there if you want to have a look at it. But I feel like if I was to put that on the strawberry where my stem is now, it would end up, like the lines would end up colliding with the shell and stuff. So I'm gonna move my stem a little bit upwards like that and just rotate it a bit as well. Like that. It's okay if it's not perfectly aligned at the top. I'm just gonna clean some lines here, give myself some space to work because we're gonna be overlapping this area. Now start with a circle where you want your flower to go. It's technically not a flower, it's the head where the flower used to be before it became a strawberry. So now that we have that circle, we're gonna go in and draw If you can see here, my stem collided a bit, and if I had left it like down here, like that, this would have looked a bit weird in the final drawing. So I am not doing that. Instead, I'm trimming the stem a little bit. And there you go, you got your the top of your strawberry turtle, which is looking pretty cute. Now I want to tidy up, just erase all the pieces of the shell that are inside of this little decorative bit. And then I want to emphasize this circle here, because that's something we're going to be keeping. And there you have it. Now we're going to do a bit of fun decor. So we're going to add a few little round balls on our strawberry. And that's essentially going to be the seeds that are stuck to the strawberry shell. And for these, I'm just placing them wherever I feel like. But I am making sure to not put them where the flippers are going to join with the shell. And remember, you can also like do some that are overlapping, like this. And that's exactly what I said not to do, so I'm going to remove that. It's easy to do though, isn't it? Once again, I'm going to delete I'm going to erase all the pieces of the shell that are inside of these little balls or the seeds. And actually with the one in the back here, I want to make that to come out behind the shell. And I feel like the back of my shell is a little bit too pointy, so I'm going to erase it a little bit and then just round it off. There we go. And there we are. So far, so good. Now I want to come in here, and for this top of the shell, I'm going to draw a few lines, just like little indications of where the leaves would split. Because keep in mind, this is not, well, I suppose it's like the head of what used to be a flower before the strawberry developed and the flower petals fell off. So this is like the bottom of the flower that holds the petals together. I don't know what that's called. Let me know in the comments if you do. And here you go. If I now deactivate my background sketch, you can see that we have our turtle with a strawberry shell. And I think this line here is looking a bit strange, so I might come in and fix that, but we're going to wait until we have everything else mapped out. All right, so we got the body. The next step is to do the flippers, and I'm actually quite happy with the flippers. I'm not going to do much with them. I think we kind of nailed them the first time. So I'm going around and basically tracing and just trying to make my edges a little bit more defined and my curves a bit stronger. So here, instead of just having a plain curve, I'm adding a little bit of a straight line, and then I'm turning back into the body, just like that. And I want to do the same on the other side. So I'm just gonna come out of my flipper a bit here, and then turn back around in a full curve. And I like that this flipper is a bit chunkier, so I do want to keep that. I'm gonna repeat that kind of straight line I had before, and then turn nicely back into the body. I feel like this flipper is not it's not really cohering with the rest of the design as much as that one is, so I'm just going to grab it. I'm going to rotate it a bit. And I'm trying to imagine like a line going through the shell where the next flipper would connect. I think maybe here. Yeah, I like that. So there you have it. We have the front flippers. Back flippers, I don't like how this one is drooping down, so I'm going to correct that. But other than that, we're not doing a whole lot more. I want it to feel like this flipper is coming, you know, out of from underneath the shell, but I don't want it to be like drooping down. And for the back flippers as well, I'm going to add a couple of little claws, like that. Not massive things. The tail, I'm just making it a little bit shorter and like rounder. because you don't see much of the turtle's tail really, do you? This one's pretty much the same. I'm adding a couple of claws. And then that's kind of it, to be honest. Now, I mentioned I wanted to change this blossom, so let's deactivate our underlying drawing and see what that looks like. I'm liking this. If I draw a temporary curve just through here, I feel like that is still looking quite nice. I'm not going to do a whole lot with this. I might just grab my blossom stem, I guess that's what it is, a blossom stem, and move it up a little bit, rotate it a little bit. That's it. Not doing a whole lot more. Connect this again. Ta-da! Now before we do our outlines, I want to add some things that I always feel makes a turtle drawing more turtle-like, and that is just adding these little marks. A little bit like if you've ever watched like the Flintstones, they usually had those little marks on everything. I love adding these marks to my work. You can mix and match a bit, so I do some triangular style ones, some oval ones, but making them a little bit edgy just emphasizes that turtle feel a bit more, because they do have like marks on their skin and things. And then on the head as well. And I always put these like on whichever end of the head is pointing away from me. There we go. Just 3 little head marks in order to make that head a bit more turtle-esque. I feel like this eye might need to just go out a little bit. Yeah. And then the eyebrow must come back in. It must come back in. And now we're going to add a little flower around this one eye, just to add a bit more of a fantasy theme around our turtle. Of course, you don't have to do this. But yeah, once you have your turtle base, you could decorate it as anything you wanted. You could do a celestial turtle, or yeah, anything. All right, let's tidy this up so we can see better. Some little lines to indicate where the petals split, or the center of the petals, I suppose. I'm gonna make these ones just a little bit shorter. And ta-da! We have our turtle sketch. How exciting! Now for your outlines. The brushes I recommend, I mean, it entirely depends on what you prefer to work with. The brushes that I like to use are either the one we're currently sketching with, which is the 6B pencil. A lot of people also use the monoline brush, which is under calligraphy. Where is that? Calligraphy. Monoline. That looks like this. And that's a really nice and clean, like manga style brush, I find. The only thing I struggle with a bit is joining it back up, because it's always the same thickness. So it's not what I like to work with, but if you want to check that out, you know, with anything in digital art, like it's just, once you find those brushes that are your thing, you'll be unstoppable. All right, so we have our new sketch. I'm going to grab it and just, well, I'm going to get rid of that flower first. There we go. I'm going to center it on the screen like that. And now before I proceed to do my outlines, I want to make my canvas bigger. So I'm first gonna just do this. Just crop it down a bit, get rid of the empty parts. And that's only because I want to work in a big format and I don't want to have any wasted space. And I'm going to do 6004, which is my preferred size to work with. You always want to make sure that you scale up before you do your final outlines, because otherwise they can get very blurry. So now I'm just taking my sketch layer and I'm just lowering the opacity, making a new layer. I'm now going to make my outlines black and we're going to start drawing. Now for the 6B, it doesn't go very thick in big canvases, so I've brought it up. I brought it to the max basically. And yeah, let's do our outlines. I am gonna put this as a time lapse. If you wanna skip to the next part of this video, here is a timestamp. You can skip to that, or if you wanna watch, then watch along. I'm gonna stop the time lapse right here because I realized I want to do something with this neck. So I'm just gonna go down into under my outline drawing, and I'm gonna create a new layer real quick. And I'm gonna select a red just to separate from the rest of this. I love this little flower on the head, and I wanna do a little bit of something along the neck as well. So I'm gonna start by just doing a little circle here, and another one. Another one. Yes, I like that. I'm going to tidy it up. And that is going to be my little flower color. Now I'm just going through again. I also want to make sure that it doesn't look like, like grandma hair, because grandma hair is cute and all, but it's not what I'm after for this particular sea turtle. And there we go. I like that. I'm going to use that. Back to the time lapse. All right, and something I didn't sketch out at first, I want to add a few more little marks just on the feet or the back flippers. Not paying too much attention to where I put them. I just think it's fun to have a little bit of decor on the skin areas. You could put these on the tail as well. I'm just worried that the tail is a little bit too small, and so it might just look a bit overcrowded on the tail. Oh yes, and up here on the stem, I just want to add a circle like this to kind of indicate the top of the stem. And there we go. And then one thing I think would be super cute, and I'm just going to freehand these, is I think it would be cute to have a few petals like flowing along. So basically what I'm doing is just a bit of a, there you go, like a petal shape. I'm sort of making them like teardrop shapes. This is the problem I'm having at the moment when I'm doing tutorials, is I'm used to sitting so close to the canvas with my face pressed into it. So when it comes to something like this, where I have to keep my head away from the canvas, it's really difficult to do the lines, but hopefully this is all right for you guys. If you saw my capybara tutorial, occasionally my head will kind of stick into the video towards the end, which was irritating, but it happened. All right, so flower petal. And to just indicate that it is a petal, we're going to add a bit of a line here. One more here, and almost like a seashell. So we got 3 lines in total, flowing with the shape of the petal. And I have 3 petals in total, 3 magic number. So if you want to do 3, 7, 13. And I'm making sure that the center line is the longest one. And I just think that it's going to be really cute as the final drawing. It gives a little bit of an environment to it. I'm going to grab this one, bring it down a little bit like that. Rotate. There we go. And anytime you rotate something in Procreate, remember to go to adjustments and just sharpen it a bit after, because Procreate does not do a good job with rotation at all. There we go. Okay, so now that we have that, I'm gonna hide my turtle drawing. I'm just gonna delete the collar drawing, the one that's like only the petal collar, because we don't need that anymore. And yeah, this is our drawing. I'm gonna move it to like the center of the page a little bit. And now prepare for another time lapse. I'm gonna make the outlines a little bit like 45%, 50% transparent. And then I'm gonna make a new layer under there. And to demonstrate what I'm doing, I'm gonna remove my background color or disable just for a little bit. I'm then gonna choose a color that is not fully white, but almost like a beige-ish color. That is just my preferred color of having like as the base for all my drawings. And now I'm gonna go down to inking. And I'm gonna choose the Studio pen. And all I'm gonna do is to go around my entire shape like that. And I'm gonna go around all of the outlines until this shape is closed, and then we're gonna fill it. So I'm gonna do that off screen because you don't need to see me draw that whole thing. And then we'll meet up in a sec. All right, so we've done our little shapes, and if I remove, or if I just hide these outlines for a second, you'll see what I mean. Like we got all of our shapes drawn up, and now I'm just gonna make sure I'm in the right layer, and I'm gonna drag and fill them. And there we go. Now I can make my outlines visible again, bring that transparency back up to the top so it's fully non-transparent. And now I'm going to make another layer over the shape. I'm going to tap it and I'm going to select clipping mask, and that just does that anything we paint now in color is going to, if I show you, and that just means that anything we paint now is going to be masked onto our shape, and it's not going to go onto the other canvas. So even if I bring our background back on, it doesn't matter. Cool, huh? All right, so let me empty that layer, and I want to start with a rosy red. So I'm gonna choose something a little bit reddish. By the way, my color palette is always available to download in the description. Make sure I'm in a correct layer for that. And I'm gonna fill this because I need this for the majority. Then I'm gonna come back in with my beige, and I'm just doing a full hard stroke, so no gradients or anything. I want these to be perfectly white. Now for our strawberry turtle, we still want parts of the turtle to be, like, we don't want everything to be this red strawberry color. Something has to be either lighter or darker. So I do want to give a slightly darker color to parts of the main strawberry. You can barely see this. It's just like a tiny, tiny bit darker. There we go. And then for the flippers, now for the body, because this is a beautiful woodland strawberry sea turtle, I want to get that kind of beautiful woodland brown in. And so I'm using that for all the sea turtle's skin. And I'm starting with just a very solid layer. I don't mind if there is a bit of like transparency involved. But my intention is to get it. I'm not going to do the head just yet because we're going to end up covering quite a bit of it. So what I want to do instead, first off, I'm going to just tidy up the shell a little bit. I'm using a slightly too big brush, I think. There we go. Tidy that up. We're going to work our way to the front. So before I do anything with this one, I want to just add a little bit of a darker color to that shell. So I'm going to color dip this and just increase the saturation, but also make it a bit darker. Make my brush quite big. And then I'm making a sort of a circle on my shell, just to get a little bit of volume in there with the red. And then I'm going to do a half. There we go. Sorry, I put like half pressure on and just dragged that line around as well. And now we can start our flowers. So I'm gonna choose my white beige and I'm gonna go in on these flowers. That brush is slightly too big. And this is why we did not put the face color on just yet, because we would have covered it up with this white and then we'd have to redo it. So it's better to paint smart and just work our way to the front. There we go. And again, before we can do that, or before we can add the face color, I am going to color dip my red again. I'm going to lower the opacity, lower the size of the brush, and I'm going to come into my flower petals and just do some circular movements, very light ones. And what I'm trying to do is to just add a little bit of a rosy gradient. The dogs next door are going absolutely mad. I'm so sorry if you can hear it. There we go. So I'm doing that with all my flower petals, and I'm going to do it with this collar up here as well. I'm just doing it very quickly. I'm not paying too much attention to like where it goes or anything. And yeah, that is it for the time being. But I also want to add just a little bit of orange to it. And again, I'm just going very gently at the tip of these leaves. It just adds a bit of life to each individual item when you get that kind of scope of colors in your work. I'm going in and just adding a little bit of orange again. And I like to think of this as the red from the strawberry, kind of, creating some nice warm reflection. And of course, like the warmth of the brown as well. And there we go. Okay, so now I'm going to color dip my brown again, bring my brush back up to full opacity, and I'm going to color in the head. Lovely. And I don't want to do like any extra types of things over here, so I can safely color in that flower. I'm going to choose my beigey white again. And I'm being careful not to go too far onto the skin. I don't mind if there's a little bit of a bleed and overlap. But because this is such a central area, I do want to keep it fairly clean. And now we're going to do the exact same thing with our flower petals. I'm just adding a little bit of a rosy tone. And then I'm going to choose my orange again. And because we are so close to the eye, or right on the eye, I am going like all the way around instead of following the petals. I think it's important to kind of follow the shape of the eye a little bit so that it doesn't look like 5 little balls sticking out from each side, you know, or in total. And now I'm going to choose this yellow. By the way, if you're wondering why this palette just magically appeared, I recorded quite far into this tutorial and then realized I hadn't pressed record, so I had to restart. But I figured since I'd already worked out the palette, we will just keep that. Now we're going to use this yellow and orange for our little seeds. So I'm going to start by just adding a solid coat of yellow. With these seeds, I don't care at all if they go outside of the lines. If anything, I think that looks kind of nice. And so I prefer if it just goes out, like outside of the lines a little bit. When it's kind of unimportant or non-centric details like these, I actually think that it makes your pieces look better almost, or like more made by humans, more alive, if there's a bit of imperfection like that. But of course it's up to the individual, and it's also, you know, it depends on the type of art style you're going for. For example, if you're doing like manga or anime and you want something with like hard tones and quite polished, then you might not want to go outside of the lines. Now I'm color dipping my orange, and I'm just lowering the size of the brush a little bit. Again, oh, okay, actually, no, I don't like that. I'm not putting full strength on this, but I'm just adding a little bit of detail to each seed. Again, it doesn't really matter that much how you do this. I'm just scribbling it on because I genuinely think these details are so tiny that it's not going to matter like a whole lot. When you zoom out, you're not going to see too much of, well, you're not going to see any of that detail, to be honest. You're just going to see, oh, there are 2 colors on these seeds, and that makes the character a little bit more alive than if it was just a flat color. And there we go. As you can tell, my small talk skills are not quite up to scratch, but you know, hey, at least I can draw, sort of. All right, here we go. We're getting somewhere. Isn't this so nice and quick to color in? All right, for the stem, if you wanted it to be like super, actually, let's try 2 things. So we could use the yellow again, and I think if we use the yellow, it would have a very nice and simple cohesive palette. But I'm also tempted to try a green just to see what that looks like. So I'm going to select a fairly yellow scope green, because when you're working with so many warm ones, you don't want to go too cold on your green. I'm going to draw this green in a new layer just so that I can easily remove it if I don't like it. And let's try this out, because we could discover that we actually quite like having that green as a pop of color, or we could decide that it just doesn't fit with the rest of our piece. Now I have my stem. I'm going to duplicate my stem layer, and I'm going to alpha lock it, and then I'm going to color dip my yellow, and now I've color dipped the orange, and I'm just adding a little bit of shade on this piece. So at the bottom I'm adding like a circular shade type thing, and then on this piece I'm trying to just follow the shape essentially. Inside as well, I'm gonna add some shade. There we go. And then I want to add yellow again. All right, so that's one option. I think that looks the most kind of cohesive, but let's go back to our green one and add a bit of color to that as well. I'm color dipping my green, and then I'm gonna tilt the color a bit more towards the blue. I'm gonna make it darker, gonna lower the opacity of my brush a little bit, and I'm gonna try to follow the same shades as I did with this one. So we're gonna do like a bit of shade inside of here, like that. And then we're gonna come in the back here. And then at the bottom, we're doing a little circle. Easy as that. Doesn't have to be too complicated. All right, let me know in the comments now which one you prefer. Do you like the green or do you like the yellow? Which one will win? If in doubt, zoom out. You know what? I thought I would hate it. I'm actually going to go with the green. I think it is, I don't know, it adds a bit of depth and a bit of a summery or springtime feel to the drawing. Whereas I think the yellow stem is just a bit too autumnal. Although if you're watching this in autumn, like totally go for the yellow one, I think. Oh, we are so going to have to draw a pumpkin turtle when autumn comes around. There we go. I like it. I hope you like it. It still feels a little bit flat on the flippers, so I'm going to color dip. I'm going to color dip my orange. I'm going to lower the opacity. I'm going to make my brush like 24%-ish and just go back down on my main color layer. I'm not ready to merge the stems yet. I want to keep both options open to me. All right, on my flippers with my orange, just adding a little bit of a glow. Little bit of a glow. Ooh. I'm not doing like a lot at all. So at first, if I zoom in, I can show you on this flipper here. I'm doing a very light layer on the back flipper. And then a second fairly light layer still with my big brush. Now I'm gonna shrink my brush and I'm gonna use a slightly harder, like I'm pressing down more and just getting a little bit more of a glow in there. You see that? Let's do it again with this flipper. So first, oh, big brush we need for this one. So first a very vague layer and then a slightly more prominent layer, and then going in with a bit of light. And I want to add just a little bit of light in this area too. There we go. And of course the head. Gotta be so careful here, but at least we're using the same orange. So even if it does bleed over a little bit onto the flower, it doesn't matter because we've already used that orange in the flower. There we go. I am being very, very careful around the head because I don't want to mess it up. And I think for the strawberry too, I'm just going to add a few little highlights with my orange. Now, if you were doing a more like realistic drawing, you could bring this orange, or you could color dip the yellow instead, bring the color down, and you could even go in like on the strawberry itself and just add little highlights. That would look so cute. I'm not going to do that because I'm not going for the whole realistic thing, but it is certainly worth keeping in mind. Now let's just try the stems again. No, I want that. I don't know why, but yeah, I do. Let's finish this baby. We're almost there. The first thing I want to do for this one right now actually is I want to try out some different background colors. I'm going to just zoom out, and I have my green still selected in my swatches. I'm going to tap my background color, choose that green, and I'm trying to find a nice woodland-ish color. Like this one feels very freshwater. And then what I'd probably do is just lower the saturation and make it a bit brighter to make it feel very freshwater-ish. And I don't know why, because you know it's a sea turtle, it should be saltwater. But because we're doing woodland, I just felt like that went better with the theme. If you find that that's total blasphemy, then do your own thing, absolutely. All right, using my words. We're going to color dip our darkest color, which is the skin color in our case. And we're going to go into our color panel And we're just gonna like make it darker and a bit more saturated. And then, I didn't use my words before, then we're gonna make a layer above our outlines, tap it again and select clipping mask. And now what's gonna happen, if I use a more prominent color to show you, if I, for example, was using this deep blue, if I now, I'm on my clipping mask, if I now toss this bright color onto my outlines, that is what happens. So you're only coloring on the outlines at the moment. Let me undo that, and then I'm going to fetch my darker color again, and I'm going to drop that onto that layer. You didn't see a whole lot of change. And now I'm going to go to each individual item in my drawing. I'm going to choose its, so in this green area, I'm choosing the darkest color, and I am making it darker, a bit more saturated, and I'm tilting it towards the blue, just a little bit. When I color in my outlines, I like to use a different brush. So I'm going to go down to airbrushing. There it is. Any of these brushes will do. I use a soft brush. And I'm just going to make sure that it's quite small. And then I'm going to color onto my drawing. What I always find when I do these things is that I make my outlines quite light when I'm working in this thing, and then I increase the contrast later on. So I'll show you how I do that as well. For the flower, we used a bit of red and orange, so I'm gonna just color dip this red right here, kind of the medium red of the strawberry, and I'm gonna use that for the flowers. And as you can see here, that means that the petals get a bit lost on the shell. Don't be scared to let the colors blend, by the way. It's perfectly fine to let the colors blend. So because the color is now vanishing, I'm going to choose a slightly darker color here. I'm not making it like massively darker. Just going a bit with the flow of the color information I already have in my drawing. I actually want it even darker in this area. And a bit lighter up here. Cool, cool. All right. For these petals as well, same thing goes. For the head, it's a bit difficult to decide what to do. I think I'm going to stick with the red, but I'm making it darker so that it still has, it still kind of pops out, you know? Because I also think that having a little bit of variety here on the head is very important, because very often we forget to add any kind of color variation to the head. We just make it like one plain color, regardless of what that color is. So I think just giving the head a little bit of a color shift, a bit of a gradient is very important. As you can probably tell with the way I'm doing the coloring for my outlines, I am not putting a massive amount of thought into each stroke. Partially, I mean, that's partially because I do this technique so often that is a bit built in now, but I also think that at times when I try to control it too much, it just doesn't turn out as nice as when I just kind of wash my brush over it and let the color flow freely. And there we go. Oh, I'm liking this. All right. For the petals as well, let's not forget the petals. Go. It's getting closer here. Color dip that. I'm gonna make it a bit lighter. See how that, yeah, there we go. Just a bit, just a bit. Okay, cool. And now for the shell. I think I'm gonna stick with the same color I've been using for my flowers. I'm gonna add that to the shell here. I can use that for the seeds too. But I do want to add just a little bit of like an extra pow to the seeds. Just so it doesn't end up looking flat. We don't want flat. For the seeds again, we're going to choose our orange. We're actually going to make it a bit more saturated because the outlines tend to wash out a bit. And then just, oh, I'm going to make it. I'm lowering the opacity on my brush using my words and then going gently over some of the seeds. And I'm adding the orange in the areas where we have the lightest color. Not all over them, but just a little bit of a shine. And I've just noticed that we've actually forgotten two important areas of our sea turtle. One is down here, the claws. So I'm going to choose my beige again. Don't worry, this will be so quick and painless. And I'm back to my paintbrush and I'm just going to color them in. Like this. They're so tiny that I don't really think they need any shade. They can just stay like that. And then I'm going to choose a little red. For the mouth, I'm using, I color dipped the medium red from my shell, and I'm doing a very soft stroke here. I'm going to let go, and then I'm going to do another one, kind of on top like that. So you get this sort of look to it. And now finally, let's just work on our outlines a bit more. We need to do the mouth first of all, so I'm just going to color dip my deep red outline. I'm actually going to color dip this beautiful dark color. For the claws, I'm going to use a red. And I'm not going in with a super hard stroke at first. I'm going to keep it quite light. Ooh. There we go. So just since we don't have a lot of color on the claws themselves, we are adding a bit of variety with our outlines. There we go. I feel like we need a little bit of a glow on the skin. So I'm going to color dip what the orange looks like when it's used for these highlights, like that. And I'm going to make it a bit more saturated, a bit darker, and a little bit more red. And then we're just going to give it a nice little stroke, nothing fancy. Same over here. I'm following the highlights for all of these. Don't worry if it goes onto the claws, it will just look better. And then same over here. Follow the highlights. Ooh, I pushed down a bit too much. Follow the highlights. And on the head as well, just following those highlights. Now the only thing we need to do is fix the eyes, because this thing is looking a bit dead and soulless at the moment. I'm going to take my color dipper, I'm going to color dip my eyes, bring my opacity to like all the way up, and then the first thing I want to do is to make sure that my eyes only have that dark color. There we go. Now I'm going to go into my color panel and I'm going to make it even darker and more saturated. And now I'm going to just make circular movements at the front of the eyes, as if drawing little pupils, I suppose, or big pupils. And just by doing that tiny change, we can already see that this character has a bit more life in it. But I have an issue specific to my drawing probably. My highlight line here is aligning perfectly with the shading of my eye. So I just need to go in and shade my eye a little bit more so that that doesn't collide. Now as a final touch, let's add a little bit of color to the background. So we're going to go down to like below all of our active layers. We're going to make a new one. We're going to go back up and choose our round brush from the paints panel. Bring your brush up to 100%. Color dip your background. And first, we're going to make it a bit a darker and more saturated. Zoom out. And now we're going to create a river stream. So all you have to do is do a little swirl like this. Go back up, come back down, go back up, come back down. And now we're gonna do it again. So you're starting up in this corner and we're gonna make it end wider than it starts. So I'm starting up here, but I'm ending down here. Again, I try to make these lines so that you can barely see them, but it just adds a little bit of texture to the background, which I think is nice. I'm going to hide our swatches for the purpose of seeing our final piece. And as I mentioned before, I like to go in and just adjust my outlines a little bit. So let's do that. I'm going to choose my color clipping mask and I'm going to go up here to adjustments and I'm going to choose curves. And if I zoom out a little bit, now you can adjust your colors using these curves. I'm going to drag this fairly low down. And then you could also make changes here if you wanted to. I usually never do. I only make the changes on like one point and then that's it. And that is what I'm going to do now too, because I'm really happy with that. And there you go, congratulations, you have finished your strawberry turtle. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, I hope it was useful to you. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or any requests for future tutorials, either drawing or how to make different products or try different hobbies. Those are all things that I do here on my channel. If you want to see more of that, please subscribe to my channel, give the video a big thumbs up, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!